Turn of the Century Life. The turn of the century brought many new and exciting changes to the country. Many of these changes happened because of the fast growth of industry in cities. Even though the wheels of change were turning quickly, some Americans held on to ideas from the previous century. Therefore, change in other areas didn't happen as quickly. Technology in cities. By 1900, 4 out of every 10 Americans lived in cities. In 1900, New York City had over 3 million residents. The cities of Chicago, Illinois, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania had over 1 million residents each. Cities had to make advances to keep up with the challenges of an expanding population. Cities were quickly running out of space to expand outward, so in 1900, cities began to build upward. Builders began constructing very tall buildings called skyscrapers to solve the problem of space in cities. Cities also found ways to connect neighborhoods together. Networks of electric trolley cars and subway train stations made transporting people easier. More and more people were also brought together with telephones and radios. Improving public education. After the Civil War, the United States made some effort to require children to attend school. Between 1865 and 1895, many states passed laws requiring children between the ages of 8 and 14 to attend school for 3 to 4 months each year. The schools cost nothing to attend. However, these early schools were not successful. Some of the teachers weren't qualified, and it was difficult to get good books and materials. As the country entered the 20th century, more and more people realized how important an education was to the future success of the country. By 1918, all American children were required to attend school at least through the elementary years. New schools were built and high schools began to offer classes in different subjects such as math, science, government, and social studies. Unfortunately, the education children received depended on the color of their skin. White children and African American children did not attend the same schools. Most African American children weren't allowed to attend high school or college. Many of these students were able to continue their education at schools started by African Americans. One such man was Booker T. Washington. After being freed from slavery, Mr. Washington became a teacher. He started Tuskegee University in Alabama, which is still open today. Segregation and discrimination. The end of the Civil War did not end unfair treatment of African Americans. Discrimination or unfair treatment was very common. In schools, theaters, restaurants, and other public places, segregation was normal. African Americans were set apart from whites. They did not sit together on buses and trains. Most public places had separate restrooms and water fountains for each group. Many southern states continued to pass black codes. These laws made it difficult for African Americans to vote, own property, or work at certain jobs. The legal system and police supported these unfair laws. Decades would pass before all of the unfair laws were repealed or canceled. The vote for women. Women did not have the same rights as men at the turn of the century. Many believed that women should only be homemakers. Many believed women were only supposed to take care of their families and not take part in politics or speak out in public. In most places, married women were considered to be under the control of their husbands. Women weren't allowed to own property, sign contracts, attend college, or work at high-paying professional jobs. Perhaps most importantly, women did not have the right to vote. Of course, many people did not think women were being treated fairly. After all, the 14th and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution guaranteed citizenship and the right to vote for all Americans, but not women. Even before the Civil War, women wanted the chance to vote. They wanted the same opportunities as men. They wanted to go to college, own land, and work as doctors and lawyers. By the 20th century, women were fighting for suffrage, the right to vote. Women began forming political groups. The National Women's Party, led by a young woman named Alice Paul, often marched in front of the White House demanding to vote. The suffragettes, as these women were known, were sometimes faced with both verbal and physical violence. Mrs. Paul was even sent to prison for 7 months. Finally, after many years of marching and fighting, the U.S. Congress passed the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which gave women the right to vote.